Welcome back to another episode of the After Hours Podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Rahaska. Here with me today is hospitality specialist John Ansa, and our guest today is Hunter Johnson from Lucky Restaurant in Roanoke, Virginia. Hunter, how are you doing today?
I'm great, guys. How are y'all?
Doing well.
Awesome, man. Thanks for being here, Hunter. Appreciate it, man.
I really appreciate you having me on here. This is awesome.
So do you want to tell us a little bit about Lucky Restaurant? How long have you been in operation, Hunter?
Yeah, so my business partner and I opened Lucky almost 11 years ago. We're in our 10th year, and we started in October of 2010.
Awesome. And I know you mentioned you had a few other places too. Would you like to speak on those a little bit?
Yeah, so we opened Lucky in 2010, and then in 2015 we opened our second restaurant called Fortunato, which is Lucky in Italian. It's an Italian concept, and we also have a little 25-seat cocktail bar as well called Stellina, which was our office at Fortunato, and we turned it into a cocktail bar. So
that's really creative. Wow. What is that, Hunter? What does Stellina mean?
So Stellina means little star.
Okay.
So I have one partner at Lucky, and I have two at Fortunato. And my other partner at Fortunato, he used to work at a restaurant in Boston called Stellina. And so, he was really great friends with the chef. And unfortunately, the chef passed away. And it was kind of a tribute to his friendship with that chef. So.
Oh, that's great. I thought maybe it had something to do with the Roanoke Star.
Well, so it does tie into that as well. You know, I mean, we do have a giant star on top of the mountain here in the middle of the city. But yeah, so there is a tie-in with that as well.
Very cool. Okay.
So originally, Hunter, what made you decide to start these businesses?
Well, so do you have an hour?
Well, we'll take the 5 minute, 10-minute high level preview.
So you know, I'm a musician, and my business partner at Lucky is a musician as well. And he was in a band in Boston, and I played in a band out of Washington D.C. And we had the same booking agent. You know, we kind of knew of each other because of having the mutual booking agent. And I had moved from Richmond back to Roanoke, and one day I saw this guy walking down the street, and I was like, "Oh man, that's JP from Chauncey,
okay,
out of Boston." And so I walked up, and he was like, "Man, what are you doing here?" And I was like, "Well, I just moved back. I moved back to Roanoke." And he was like, "Funny you should say that. I just moved back here as well. My parents live in Salem, Virginia, which is like right around the corner." And he was like, "Hey man, how about we get together and write some songs together?" I said, "Great." And so we got together, we wrote a few songs. One thing leads to another. We got a placement deal with a company out of LA where they, promote your music for TV and film. And we landed a couple of really big placements. And because of that, the song that got the placement and started getting some traction. So we started touring again. We had both kind of stopped, being touring musicians. Started touring again, and our favorite thing to do was, like, when we were in New York, we'd go out to eat and go out to drink, And the thing that we realized was, like, you could go to a restaurant in New York and get not only a great meal, but you could also get a great cocktail. And that was something that we didn't have here in Roanoke. And so we were like, why don't we do this in Roanoke? We thought it would give us time to play more music, which was, like, probably one of the dumbest ideas that we
wow.
It was like that wasn't the case. But anyway, so we opened Lucky. We based it off of a couple of our favorite restaurants. One was in LA. It's called Animal. And then there's one in New York that we go to. Is this restaurant group owned called Marlowe and Sons and Diner. And then, like the first legit cocktail bar I went to was Please Don't Tell. And so it was like, man, let's do this in Roanoke. And that's how it happened.
Wow. So I mean, Hunter, really the music kind of led you guys together. And from there, it really kind of birthed the idea of opening up a restaurant.
Absolutely. Like, had we not been musicians, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you guys today. We wouldn't have either restaurant. And, it was because of music. And it's something that we still put a priority on because we realized that had we not, been musicians, none of this would have happened. And so we feel like that it gives us both a lot of happiness and keeps us sane. And so we continue to make records and send stuff to our, the company in LA, and they still shop our stuff around for us. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, Hunter, I'm not obviously not in the music trade, but it sounds like you and JP did the smart thing about realizing that you guys had some success musicians, and how could you commoditize that and take that money and put it into investment, and that probably sets you apart from a lot of musicians who just really try to make all their money just through music.
Sure. Oh yeah. I mean, I did it. I tried to be, I because of music, I've gotten to do a lot of really amazing, cool things in my life, and play crazy shows and be around. I've been around the people that are super successful at the game. I never quite got there, and however, because of that, I learned how to hustle, and opening the restaurant was very similar to being in a band. You have a cast of characters that make it happen. Head chefs are lead singers. I mean, it's amazing. Like, I'm a drummer, so I'm like Switzerland. I'm the guy that like keeps everybody like content, but it was interesting to open the restaurants and see how the two things kind of are very similar as far as creativity, getting people excited. We're putting on a show every night when we're open, so.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's one question I was going to ask, Hunter. Being from a music background, do you guys have a lot of different live music acts coming in and out?
So we don't do live music at all.
Okay.
Because we don't want to deal with musicians. we're notorious pains in the ass, you know what I mean?
It's very true.
But we do have 2 doors down from Lucky. We have a great little listening room that holds about 120 people. And, we've had some really, like Colin Hay from Men at Work has played there. We've had some cool artists come through, and then they come in the restaurant. And one thing I should mention is both restaurants are on the same street. They're within like 50 yards of each other.
Wow.
And so that way we were able to like kind of keep an eye on them both, but,
well, Hunter, I've had the good fortune of being in your restaurant a few times, and one thing that always struck me about it is that it is an incredible experience. As soon as you come through the doors of Lucky or Fortunato, and even Stellina, you're kind of transported into a different experience. It still feels like Roanoke, but it really takes on a whole new experience. So can you kind of and talk to me a little bit about, as a restaurateur, how you went about building your restaurant experience? And you can start with Lucky or both, or however you want to take it. That's
a good question. Like, we took elements of things that we saw as far as like the building of the restaurants, the build out, like the atmosphere and the vibe. Like, we spend a lot of time thinking about that. Like, if you don't get that right, if you do not get the atmosphere and the vibe correct, you're just putting yourself at a disadvantage from day one when you open, So we spent a lot of time thinking about that. And then, for example, at Lucky, we made sure that it's a kind of a shotgun room. We have a 16-seat bar. There are booths on the other side of the bar. There's only like 4 feet of separation between the bar and the booths. So we built the booths up 8 inches off the ground so that people are sitting at the same height as everyone sitting at the bar. We didn't want people to feel uncomfortable seated below,
Yeah.
And as far as the vibe, like, basically we wanted to open a place that we would want to go hang out in. you know?
Okay.
And we went, and like at the time when we opened, people thought we were insane that we didn't have TVs. They're like, you're never going to make it. And we were like, well, if we don't, we'll just do something else, because we're never going to have a TV in any of our places, because we really wanted people to come in and socialize and talk to one another, you know?
Okay.
So,
wow. That's it. It's an incredible answer. And obviously, you know, the Roanokers have really responded to it, and they kind of cling to it now as it kind of becomes their place, and a place they want to show off and they want to represent. Can you talk to me a little bit about just how the young generation, the millennial generation, is just really just linked themselves to your restaurant? And were you surprised at the response that was that great?
oh, I mean, I was surprised that anyone came at all. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, really, honestly, one of the things that we talk about a lot is one of the only places where you go and you get people of all ages, all races, nationalities, everything, is the grocery store. It's really the only place where everyone kind of interacts, because they're, and we wanted to make sure that anyone that came into our restaurants felt comfortable being here, whether you're a, 22-year-old, just out of college, or a 70-year-old retired person, And so that was one thing that, we talk about with our staff a lot. I mean, it's hospitality. It's like, the hospitality is the key to why we've been successful, and people have felt comfortable coming in. It's like, if people want to work for us, they have to be nice, and they have to go above and beyond and think about what the guest needs before the guest needs it. If not, they're not going to be successful here. They're going to get.
Yeah. So when you guys were originally crafting these restaurants, did you and JD, did you and JP do all the design yourself, or did you bring some specialists in, or how did that work?
So we did a lot of the design, came up with a lot of the design concepts. And we also had a really great friend named Mickey Nelson, who unfortunately passed away last year during COVID, who was this really, really cool, older, eccentric interior designer who was also a musician. So we could all kind of relate to one another. And we would talk to him about ideas and things that we saw and that we had, and he was able to actually make them come to life, And so, yeah, while we did come up with a lot of the concepts, we did have someone to help us, picking colors, paint colors, and this and that, and also tell us if we had an idea was like not great.
Right. What advice could you give to somebody that's looking to start a restaurant in the industry?
I would say that first and foremost, you got to realize that it's a way of life. And if you're not willing for it to be your way of life, you probably shouldn't get in this business, At least, I mean, eventually you get to a point where you can, if you're successful with it, you can build your business up, and then you can not have to be there all the time, But quite honestly, the first 5-6 years, you need to be in the restaurant at all times, as an owner. At least one of the partners, needs to be there. And so that would be my biggest piece of advice. When people say to me, I'm thinking about opening a restaurant, I say, well, I ask them a series of questions. The first of which is like, so do you like being at home on Friday and Saturday nights? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, that's a red flag. How about, I know you have little kids, you're willing to miss, birthdays and things like that, for a few years. No, well, you shouldn't get in the restaurant business.
Yeah, it's true.
It is a way of life, and it's a fight, and, you basically just have to be willing to kind of give up everything to get it going and to get it to where it's on its own feet, you know.
Hunter, I wanted to ask you a little bit, and you mentioned that you were, really being involved for the past initial 5 or 6 years. What role did you play when you say you worked in the restaurant? What area of the restaurant did you align yourself with?
So we wanted to have a really, we wanted to have I wanted to have a cocktail program that, not competing with other places in Roanoke, I wanted to create a cocktail program where if someone came in from Miami, LA, Portland, Oregon, New York into our place, they were like, man, this is a legit cocktail bar.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took it upon myself to become that. I wanted to create that program. And so the year and a half before we opened, I spent a lot of time, I traveled a lot. Of course, what I did is I identified, this is like 2008, I identified people in the industry that were, the ones that were really championing the idea of craft cocktails. Dale DeGroff, Jeffrey Morgenthaler, all these people. And I would fly to their city and sit at their bar and watch them work.
Wow.
And they didn't know why I was there, and so then I started the Lucky Cocktail program, and then I would travel to make sure that what I was doing was like on par with what other people were doing, and it was always a really nice feeling to come back from a trip and be like, guys, you know what, we're doing a good job. We're definitely setting the trend here in Virginia, but yeah. I feel like we are doing, I feel like if Jeffrey Morgenthaler walked into Lucky right now, that he would be like, all right, man, this place is good,
Yeah.
And so that was my job role. I mean, I tended bar 5-6 nights a week for about 4 years until we opened Fortunato, and then I was forced. I mean, my true love is bartending, but as an owner, it got to a point when we were trying to expand, I could no longer play that role anymore. I had to, I was going to have a whole nother cocktail program to have to deal with, people to train. And so that was my job role in the beginning.
Wow.
So, and subsequently now with COVID happening, I've gotten back behind the bar some just because we are a little short staffed. But, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Hunter, can you tell me a little bit, you touched on it a little briefly. Can you tell me a little bit about your training program? Because, the cocktail menu that you're producing night in, night out, and the things that you're coming up with, you're right. They are really on par with a lot of the major cities and the cocktail programs in the country. What's the training program like? How extensive it is? Can you kind of get into that a little bit?
I am really, the good thing about Roanoke is, there aren't a lot of places that there are a few places trying to do cocktails at a certain level. And so I've been very fortunate, to when people move here from other cities that have worked in the cocktail, craft. I hate the word craft cocktail.
Yeah, I don't like it. What other word can we use? Huh?
I don't know, man. I just don't like, something other than that,
Yeah, but, it's played out.
Yeah, but the, people coming to town, I would get those people to come and see me and want to work with me, And so as far as the training program back then,
mm-hmm.
it would be, I would have those folks work with me one-on-one for about a month, where they didn't really make drinks. They just were standing right next to me while I worked. And then the next month after that, we would switch spots, and I would be there right there with them and talk to them about why I do things a certain way, why I like things done a certain way. And, just basically give them like everything that we do behind the bar, there's a reason why we do it a certain way, and just to try to explain it to them, I'm really fortunate right now. I have one of the best bartenders I've ever worked with in my life. Taylor Mann has been working with me now for 4 years.
Wow.
And he, not only is he a great bartender, but he is extremely creative. And that's been that's been super helpful to me, because for the longest time I was having to be responsible for 3 cocktail lists,
Oof.
Yeah, imagine that. And
that's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. And so now I he's doing an amazing job. He's pretty much responsible now for, like, he will be the one that is like, okay, it's time to do a cocktail list change. And so now it's great. He'll be like, Hunter, he'll give me specific things he wants me to do for the list. He'll be like, I need a stirred tequila drink, and so we'll divide and conquer, cocktails on the list, cocktail menu. So,
wow.
But yeah, but training wise, yeah, unfortunately at the time, but it was very hands-on with me. So, and then after we opened Fortunato, I worked up there with those bartenders for about 4 months. And then when Stellina opened, I actually was the bartender in Stellina for the first 2 months that we were open, and because I wanted to kind of get a feel of how the place was,
Yeah.
And then I was able to take bartenders from Fortunato and put them in, plug them in play. So.
Wow. Now, is it very similar as far as the culinary side of it? Is there kind of similar training programs that exist? Is it really your executive chef that drives that?
Yes, yeah. So the head chefs are 100% responsible for our like food menus. Those guys don't want me in the kitchen cooking food.
Yeah.
I do create, like, I spend, not right now, but before COVID happened, I was spending 10 to 12 hours a week in the kitchen, working on stuff for our cocktail programs. I try to make pretty much as many ingredients as I can in-house, from tonic to ginger beer to bitters to, you name it.
So Hunter, do all 3 of your establishments offer food options?
Yes. Yeah. So the Stellina is kind of a smoke and mirror. In Virginia, you can't have just a bar without selling food, but Stellina feels like you're in a whole different business. Mm-hmm. And so we were able, because it is part of Fortunato, we're able to use the Fortunato food sales for the food sale purposes of the ABC in Virginia. So it's great, but we do offer food in there, but it is mainly a cocktail bar.
Well, Hunter, one of the things interesting about is Stellina is that it is, you're right. It is part of Fortunato, but it has a different feel to it. And I've always wanted to ask you this: is that in Stellina behind the bar, there is this beautiful Amazon woman, this painting of an Amazon woman, and every time I go in there, I'm always struck by it, and it has this 70s, 80s like Burt Reynolds Gator vibe.
Yeah.
It's just I don't know. It's one of these art pieces that when you're there and you're kind of experiencing it, it really kind of, for me, added to the whole experience. So I've always wanted to ask you that. Where did you find that beautiful piece?
So I pretty much built that bar around that piece.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah. It's cool you picked up on that because, long story short, it was, one of my favorite things one day, when I retire or whatever, I'm going to have my own booth in like one of those like antique mall things. I love that stuff. I love going and walking around and looking at a bunch of shit, And I was one day I was, when we were getting ready to build out Stellina, I saw that picture. That picture cost $60 at an antique mall. And then I started doing more research on it, and it turns out that artist was contracted by, what's the big in London? There's a big like a Macy's type.
Christie's.
Yeah,
Christie's in London.
Yeah, so they had hired this artist in the '60s to create a series of paintings for that store, and that was one of the paintings. There's a whole series of that same woman.
Wow.
And, yeah, wild. And because the whole vibe we were going for in there was like, you're in my basement hanging out. You know what I mean? Like,
it's a cool basement, man.
Yeah. Oh man, I wish I had that in my basement.
Yeah.
That bar would be great. You'd never see me.
Wow.
But yeah. So that whole room kind of came about around that, because
Very cool.
we wanted to call it Bert's Bar.
Did you really?
Yeah, for Burt Reynolds, because we're all.
So I was spot on with the Burt Reynolds reference.
They even got that too. And so yeah, it was like that 60s, 70s, vibe going on.
I loved it.
And the bar itself is made out of when Old Crow Distillery closed.
Oh.
One of the salvage companies around here went and took a lot of the wood, like the timbers, out of the distillery, and they built our bar out of wood out of Old Crow Distillery, which
interesting. Wow, that we had I will never reveal his name, but freshman year at University of Dayton, this guy lived down the hall from me. His nickname was Old Crow.
Oh man,
because that's all he seemed to want to drink. Every time we saw him, he had a handle of Old Crow in his hand, and sometimes it was good, sometimes it was bad.
Yeah, right. Yep.
That is incredible. I mean, what the amount of work that you put into Hunter, it just everything it seems to be personalized, and there's a story to everything, and you really can show that it really shows the amount of detail and thought that you put into the entire build out of the restaurant and the concept.
You just summed up the restaurant industry in a nutshell. It's all about the little details.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The little details. If you're hitting all the little details, all the big ones just automatically fall in place because you're doing that already. If you're focusing on all the little things,
You seem very, very knowledgeable and passionate about your restaurant. So what is your favorite thing about owning and operating your bars and restaurants in Roanoke?
Honestly, I really, this is going to be a, kind of a cheesy answer, I would say, but it's the honest truth. I really, really enjoy taking care of guests.
Mm-hmm.
It's a game to me, how great, service, like the level of service that I can give and that we can give, my team of people can give.
Mm-hmm.
And that's absolutely my favorite part. I want people to come in and us to, I want to always over deliver. Like I don't want a guest to ever want for anything. But also I want them to have everything that they need, even when they don't realize that they need it. I talk with my staff a lot about that. I'm like, a lot of places don't do that. So often a guest doesn't realize that they would have a better experience if something happened, that we do. And so it's kind of like, make sure that the guests, you're always thinking ahead of what they need. And so, yeah, that is the most fun part, and the part that I enjoy the most is the hospitality aspect of it.
Hunter, in with that, what do you like about running a bar in Roanoke?
I've really enjoyed over the years, not only educating myself with what we're doing, but watching other people, like our guests, learn as they're going as well, and get excited about making cocktails or enjoying really great, whiskey, or, that to me has been the really fun part. It's also given me the opportunity to do some things in my life that I never would have imagined that I would do, and be part of things that I'm not a chef, I think if I could go back and do it all again, I think I would have liked to have been a chef. But being a bartender, it gave me the opportunity to do something. I'm not saying I'm a chef by any means, but doing something with beverages that similar to what's happening, in the kitchens. And so,
what type of you talked a little bit about educating your customers. Is there any other than them coming in the restaurant? Is there anything else that you do, or things that you do to educate your customers and enlighten them a little bit?
Well, I mean, when they come in the restaurant, we're very good about, for example, say you came in and you're like, I really wanted to like Japanese whiskeys. I see them. I wish that I could. I've never really tried them, but I see them and I'm interested in it. One thing that we do is Taylor and I will get down all the Japanese whiskeys and pour you a quarter of an ounce of each one so you can try them. Because they're not doing us any good just sitting up on the shelf. You know what I mean?
You're right. Yeah.
And so that's one thing we do. During COVID, one of the ways that we kept the doors open, we did cocktail classes. Where we would do 15 people in a Zoom. We do one on Friday and one on Saturday. We would give you everything that you need to do that class. So you'd come by and pick up your kit. It would have all the bar tools. It would have all the ingredients, all the alcohol. It even would come with a cheese board, and it was set up for 2 people, for like a date type thing. And we would do these cocktail classes, and it was really, really, really fun. And that also, I do a cocktail class in Stellina before COVID called Shaken and Stirred, where I would do up to 20 people, where it's a bar experience where everyone has their own station set up, and we would make 4 cocktails together, and I would it's a really fun thing. Hopefully we can get back to that eventually. But
yeah, that's really, Hunter, I think what I really love about what you're saying is that your staff takes the time to educate your customers and bring down whiskeys. And a lot of times, that's people are in a rush and people want things instantaneously. Does your staff ever feel that pressure that they're, hey, I'm spending a little time too much with this guy, or is it something where your experience kind of just relaxes everybody? Like, how do you kind of handle those pushy guests?
Interestingly enough, a lot of our guests we have one of 2 guests. We have a lot of people that are from out of town that are, coming to Roanoke and staying at the Hotel Roanoke. And then we have a lot of repeat guests, and we often already know that, they could possibly be, I don't want to use the word difficult or, particular. Mm-hmm. Let's use the word particular. And so we know these things. One thing that we do to help prepare ourselves for that, we use Open Table as our reservation system. Mm-hmm. At the end of the night, every server, if something stands out to them, they go into the Open Table under that guest's name and they make notes. And then that way, when the guest comes, we can be like, they don't like, this person doesn't care for this, but they like, so when they sit down, we automatically are ahead of the game.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah. Open Table, I assume Resi, all of them have the same features, mm-hmm. but it's an incredible resource to be able to it sounds a little creepy, that we're keeping notes on guests, but mm-hmm. When I was in college, I worked for this men's clothing store here that had been in business since like 1880 something.
Wow.
And all the guys that worked there were like, getting close to retirement, and they worked there their whole lives, and they made their, they sold a suit, they got a commission. They were commissioned salespeople, and they would all keep these little notepads in their pockets, and they knew everything about every person that came in. They would know, like, son's name of the person, wife's birthday. Like, your wife had a birthday last week, didn't she? Like, stuff like that. And the guest is like, yeah, So we that was one thing I learned, and so we started utilizing the guest notes in OpenTable. It's awesome. So I highly recommend it to anyone.
Wow. Hunter, I think that what is interesting here that, I've used OpenTable in many of my restaurants, and, it's like the human brain. We only use a certain percentage of it. And I think there are so many operations that use OpenTable and don't use the guest note file. And that's always been an option. And your restaurant and, your restaurants, you using that file, you are really maximizing the use out of OpenTable, and it does have a lot of great features. But
Sure.
And it sounds like you're using it, having your staff take that extra step to do that. Like you said, you can kind of manicure their experience the next time they're in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it keeps it coming back.
Absolutely. And it's helpful to, like for me or, my bartenders, say a guest came in and they, I made them a drink of something that they really, really enjoyed. I can go and if it's something that maybe I create, like that I made on the spot for them, I can go in there and write it down in OpenTable. So then I don't forget it.
Wow.
I can write it in my book, but that I keep behind the bar. But, I'm horrible with people's names. Like, I can remember what you drink and this and that, but as soon as someone tells me their name, it's like, right. And it's something that I've never really been great at, but I can remember what people eat and drink. I use OpenTable. It's great, for that purpose.
Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing. Especially if somebody's like a bourbon drinker or a gin drinker, and then you have a new bottle coming in. You're like, hey, maybe try some of this.
Yeah,
that'd be.
Yeah, Joe.
I've never had a bartender or anybody do something like that, but that'd be amazing. That you take the notes and you realize that somebody enjoys that, and then get some new product in. Like, it's that extra step that I feel like would keep a lot of people coming back.
Oh man, it's all about making the guests feel special, and being genuine about it, not just just being aware of what they like. You can create guest loyalty like right away from that.
Wow.
And then on the other side too, I don't want to change subjects on you guys because you guys are asking me the questions.
No, go ahead.
But, one thing that you got to stay in tune to as well is like if someone does have a complaint or an issue, not to just dismiss it. Sometimes no matter what you do, it's not going to, the rare times that you have an issue, sometimes you're not going to be able to fix that problem.
Mm-hmm.
But, I like to use a specific example. One of my best customers that I have at Lucky, she has been coming here since we opened. Well, her first time that she came here, she had a horrible experience. Like this is when we had just opened. We didn't know what we were doing, but she posted something about it on Twitter, and I direct messaged her and said, I saw what you said, and I'm really, really sorry. And I sent her a gift certificate for like $150,
Wow.
And, to this day, she's probably she's one of our most loyal customers. And she's like really big on the social medias. She's constantly promoting our businesses with her social media. And like, had I just said, you know what, she doesn't know what she's talking about. We're doing everything perfect.
Yeah.
I would have lost that lifelong customer.
Yep.
Yeah.
Interesting story. Her brother's a really great bartender, is moving to Roanoke, and he's going to be coming to work for me. So,
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, the ROI on that is incredible, Hunter. I mean, you basically made her an organic salesman or salesperson for your bar.
Sure. And it hurts when you get bad feedback.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You never want to get the bad feedback, but you just got to do what you can. You never know what's going to come out of it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And you never know who's walking in your bar, and you never know who your customers are and who they'll turn out to be. And it sounds like you and your staff take the steps to make sure that everyone isn't just not just the first and last time for them. You want returners.
You never know, because like a really good example of that is one night I had a guy that came in, and any night I'm just working the bar, bartending, and then I get an email from him like the next week, and he's like, "Hey, I'm so-and-so, and I work for Southern Living, and I'm writing a book about bourbon and bacon, and I'd like for you to submit a cocktail recipe for the book."
Wow.
Like, I had no idea who this person was, and so then I submitted it, and then Morgan was like, he called me one day. He's like, "Hey man, I just want you to know your cocktail's in the book. It's kind of buried deep in the book, and the picture's kind of small, And then I get a copy of the book in the mail, and I open it up. He was messing with me. The first cocktail in the book was mine, and it was a whole picture.
Wow.
It was a whole page. Yeah, Roanoke, Virginia.
And on the map.
Yeah, it was awesome, because we were in there with the Silver Dollar out of Louisville, and all these great bourbon cocktail bars. It was pretty rad, man.
That is a great story.
So Hunter, we haven't talked about your cocktails much. If somebody was to come into your bar for the first time, what cocktail would you recommend for them?
Well, it depends. Like, if it's a spirit, say they want something stirred, like a spirit forward cocktail. My absolute favorite classic cocktail is a Vieux Carré, So I would make them a Vieux Carré to start. If they wanted something like me to, like one of my drinks, I would do something, stirred in that, but the Vieux Carré is the cocktail that I often start people off with. They're like, make me something whiskey related,
All right. Hunter, I have to ask about it, because I want people to know about it. Can we talk about the Cube?
Yeah, sure. So the Cube is like one of those things that like took on a life of its own, But it was like about 8 years ago. My co-bartender at the time, Brittany Jones, and I, we were just getting pummeled on Friday and Saturday nights, and I was like thinking about it one day. I was like, it'd be awesome if I could come up with something where I did the work on Wednesday, and then we could do it really quickly on Fridays and Saturdays to help with ticket times and things like that. And I was like, I always wanted to do a drink where the ice cube was the actual mixer, in the cocktail.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about like, well, what's kind of the ultimate bourbon cocktail to me is a bourbon and ginger. Okay. You can drink it in the summer. You can drink it in the winter. It kind of will fit the bill at any time. So I was like, why not do something with ginger in it? And then I was like, all right, well, what about apples? And so then I came up with this idea, and I juiced a bunch of Gala apples and ginger root. And then I cooked it with a bunch of spices: cinnamon, cardamom, clove, juniper, hibiscus, other things. And then I slightly sweetened it, and I froze it into a big, giant ice cube. And so we serve it in a chilled glass that's smoked with apple wood.
Wow.
And just throw a couple ounces of small batch bourbon on there. And man, like, it was one of those things where I made the first weekend, I'd made 50 of those for the Friday and Saturday, and we sold all of them, and I was like, wow, okay. Yeah. That's cool. And so I was making them for the weekend, and then we started getting bad Yelp reviews, because it'd be like, well, I went to Lucky on Monday night, and they were out of the queue. Well, by the way, this drink has never been on a menu.
Yeah.
ever, ever on the menu. You know, and it's like, so then I realized like, okay, I've got to start making these, you know, so that we make enough so that we have them for every day of the week. And we sell about 150 a week now.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's never been on the menu.
Never been on the menu. And it's a lot of word of mouth. Like, you know, if someone's staying at the Hotel Roanoke, they'll be like, hey, go over to Lucky and get a Q. And people will be like, what? You know, concierge will just be like, yeah, just trust me. Just go do it, you know.
Wow.
And during COVID, the Q, you know, we were selling them without the alcohol. And then in the month of April, like that first April during COVID, I sold 2,500
cubes.
Yeah.
Just a cube.
Yeah, I was making them every freaking day, man.
So
Yeah, I was in the kitchen cooking every day, like, and I couldn't keep up with the demand. I could have sold probably double that had I had.
God.
You know? Yeah. So and at $5 a piece, you can do the math on that.
Yeah, I'm doing it in my head right now.
Pretty good for
Oh my
ice.
God.
Yeah,
So when you say you were selling them without alcohol, were you just having people put in the liquor themselves?
Yeah. So at the time, the state of Virginia wasn't a lot. Eventually they said we could do, you know, cocktails to go, but at that time they weren't. So people were like sitting at home, like just jonesing for something.
Yeah.
You know? And so they could just sit at home. They would come by, you know, we'd take them out to their car, curbside, and, you know, they go home, and it was great. It was really fun. They'd post their photos of the, you know, the Instagram stuff, and it made us all feel really good. People had at least something to get through all that fiasco we went through.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, I didn't want to touch on too much, but we can talk about real quick, like the ugly truth of COVID. Do you think, and I'll ask it in this way, do you think COVID has made you a more adaptable businessman, or do you think it just was a complete, absolute hindrance on you?
No, I mean, yeah, we opened each restaurant 5 different ways during COVID.
Jeez.
Yeah. And we hustled, man. It was like about adapting. What it did for me, and really it did for like my staff. We were able to keep 7 core employees at each restaurant fully employed through the whole pandemic, you know,
Wow.
because I knew that once we reopened, we had to have people to work.
Yeah.
And, but I think the one thing that it had, the people that were part of all that with me and my business partners, it created an appreciation of what we're doing now.
Mm-hmm.
And it like is like, man, let's not screw this up, because all the things that we had to do to, you know, to survive through that, I don't ever want to have to do those again. You know,
Yeah.
I want to do what we're doing now, and I don't, you know, I want to make sure that what we're doing now is the best that we can, because we don't want to have to go back to doing takeout and doing, you know, outdoor dining. And I mean, it was wild. Like I set up a restaurant outside
Oof.
for 3 months under tents,
Oof.
you know, and we would walk 20,000 steps a night in 90-degree heat, 95, you know.
Jeez.
And it was like, man, it made us really appreciate what we had prior to all that, you know.
Yeah. It's real grateful. And it is. It was a really, it still is a tough thing on restaurants right now, but
Sure.
I think it's an amazing story that you can tell that you were able to keep, you said 7 and 7, so 14 people gainfully employed, and you made an impact into those people's lives, and you've kept them working. And, you know, there's something to be said there. You know, you definitely changed a few people's lives, which is really great.
Yeah. And they changed mine too, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, I have to admit, like I definitely have, I don't want to call it PTSD,
Yeah.
but that was such a stressful time from the owner perspective. You know, I do have anxiety now because of it, you know, like,
Really.
yeah, Sunday nights, man, I couldn't wait for Monday to come to go to work, you know,
Yeah.
couldn't wait.
Yeah.
And now I get like nervous, and I get,
Jeez.
yeah, because it was crazy, John. Like I would sit in my yard and be like, man, I don't know if I'm going to have a business in a year.
Gee, yeah.
Went from having two restaurants that were doing great. I'd signed a lease on the third restaurant that we were going to open the week before COVID hit, to having to lay off a bunch of people that I loved to death, and not knowing if I was going to be able to, make my car payments and stuff. It was crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. And people think that the restaurant industry, and you guys know this, but the majority of people don't realize that just because we're allowed to have people back in dining and restrictions are lifted, things aren't back to normal at all. But people in their minds think that it is, and it's not.
No.
Because I don't have enough staff to be open the amount of hours that we used to be right now.
Yeah.
So it's but
you're kind of doing what about a little bit about Hunter? What do you think are some keys that your social media platforms? I think I mentioned to you this when we were talking about doing the podcast with you. Your social media platforms are always really on point. They're really well done. They're updated. What do you think are just a few keys you'd want to send the listeners on marketing restaurants?
I think that if you can afford to have a social media company to handle that for you,
okay,
like we do, you do that.
Okay.
It's it'll be way more consistent. I could do a lot of the things that our social media team do for us, but it's not going to be consistent. I might post something one day and forget for that was one of the things that I was wanted to have taken off the table, to where it was more uniform, more thought out, not just, oh man, this would be a great post right now, So that's what we did. And by the way, they both are really great friends and customers I've known for years.
Oh, okay.
So they understand. Yeah, one guy's called the Hungry Asian, John Park.
Oh, okay.
Okay. He's a social media, I guess we'd call it influencer or whatever, for food. That's what we did. And it definitely made things a lot better. You were saying that you enjoy it, and that's great. So.
Yeah, and they're local, and you said they're local, so they're previous customers or current customers that you've hired to run your accounts.
Yes.
Wow.
And it's very affordable too. What they charge us, it's not a crazy amount of money. I feel like we definitely get what we pay for and then some. So.
Yep.
That's great advice.
Yeah, it's great to be consistent in that industry, because like you said, sometimes bars and restaurants, they may post 3 or 4 times in a row, 3 or 4 days in a row, then not post for 2 weeks or something, because they get super busy. So when you have that social media person, you're able to just maybe send them a few pictures here and there, and they can post consistently every day or every other day or whatever your schedule is.
And the other thing that they bring to the table is that they stay on top of it. If someone has a question or a comment, or and they don't if there's something that I need to respond to, they send it to me and tell me I need to respond to this. Right. Instead of letting it go for a couple days or this or that, So highly recommend working with, if you can find a good group that's not going to, kill you on price, it's worth it.
Yeah, and Hunter, while we're kind of on the topic, where can people find you and your restaurants on social media?
At Lucky Roanoke, on Facebook, it's at Facebook/Lucky Roanoke. Our website's eatitlucky.com. Do people use websites anymore? And then Instagram's the same. It's Lucky Roanoke, and same for Fortunato. It's Fortunato Roanoke.
Yeah. Is it interesting, Hunter, having 2 restaurants down the street from each other? That's. Do you find yourself just kind of taking one product, flour from one restaurant into another, or what's that dynamic like?
Yeah, sometimes we do that.
Okay.
But there's also a nice little level of competitiveness between the two places.
Oh, okay.
And it's not out of spite or mean, it's not mean spirited.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those things where, chef doesn't want to borrow something from chef down the street,
Yeah.
He doesn't want chef down the street to think that he didn't, he forgot to order something.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean. Friendly competition. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very friendly competition. But when we're in a time where somebody really needs something, by all means, yeah, we definitely help each other out. And, so that, for me, it's been nice. It's 200 steps between each restaurant. I know that because of my watch, my Apple Watch. So get a little exercise.
Yep.
Get a little exercise, but it's great because I can be here at Lucky, and then walk down there for a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and so.
Wow. Well, they're both. A question about real estate. So they're both in Fortunato's on the corner, and Lucky is on a side street that's kind of tucked away in a cool little area near downtown, right in downtown. What does the word real estate mean to you when it comes to restaurants and how it relates to your places?
When we opened Lucky, almost 11 years ago, on our street, once you got past us, it was pitch black.
Okay.
All the buildings were vacant and falling down, But we really liked the location here for a couple reasons. We liked the fact that it was kind of on a side street, like almost like an alleyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There was a parking lot right across the street from us, which we thought, okay, well then, people won't have to walk very far. They can't have an excuse about having parking issues, And then we had the music venue a couple doors down. So those were like the selling points for us on that, And at the time, the market area in Roanoke, there's like it's a city, but it's a town. We'll just call it the way it really is. Yeah. The central area is like where all the bars and the restaurants are. There's a couple museums, things like that. Gets a little wild down there, And so
in the sense of what? When you say wild, what do you mean wild?
Like college people getting,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of get her done spots, which I have, dude.
Good point. Get her done. I know exactly what you mean. There's get her done spots.
Yeah, okay. I'm not opposed to,
Nah, we all want to get her done.
Yes, getting it done, but it gets a little wild, and so we were like wanted to be in maybe a little bit of a quieter spot.
Yeah.
And create our own thing, like create our own vibe. You know what I mean? And so that's why we chose Lucky, and then subsequently our street started to get life going on with it. And then we have a different developer that we did Fortunato with than Lucky, and he's based out of Richmond, Virginia. And he is former restaurant owner, Oh,
okay.
He owned a bunch of places. Great. His name's Bill Chapman. He's a great dude. But anyway, he sought us out. He was doing the Fortunato building. He was putting in, 168 apartments upstairs.
Ooh.
And he came in one night and he said, I want to talk to you. And I said, sure. And he goes, I want you guys to put a restaurant in on the corner down here. He's like, I don't want anyone else going in there other just you guys.
Wow.
And the coolest thing about all that is JP and I, we'd get off work and we would, JP lives around the corner from where Fortunato is.
Oh, okay.
And we would stand on that corner and be like, man, that is like the perfect place for a restaurant on that corner. Big giant windows, and we could see it.
Wow, that's so. Really, the compliment the guy you said his name is Bill Jeff. Bill Jeff, is that correct?
Chapman.
Sorry, Chapman. That compliment he gave you turned into an opportunity.
Yes. Yeah. And he was like, I'm willing to wait. He's like, if you guys aren't ready to do this now, we'll wait a year. So
Wow.
Yeah.
Because I mean, having visited your restaurants, that always struck me is that the locations are really well planned out. They're a good distance from kind of the center of the city, and
Mhm.
but there has been development kind of around you, and do you think that's attributed to you driving customers to that area?
Well, I mean, I think that we're just part of the puzzle. You
Okay.
know? A lot of things happened over the last 10 years. I think the best thing that happened to Roanoke is when the economy went south in 2008, because people like had to scramble and figure out what they were going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so people started, took some risks and bought some buildings and decided, hey, I'm going to develop these buildings. When we opened Lucky, there were only 250 people living downtown.
Really?
Yep. Now there's close to 4,000.
Wow.
So
wow.
It's over 10 times.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a lot of people.
It is though.
But when you go from that to that, and it's a lot of young people now.
Yeah.
It's great. Like I love driving. Used to be you never saw anyone walking around downtown in the mornings at all. Now it's like there are people everywhere, and it's young people, like young professionals, people going to the medical school, and
it really is. I think there was an article, Hunter, that was written about you. Was it The Little Town That Could? It was something along lines of that. Was that the Wall Street Journal? Who wrote that article?
It's the New York Times.
The New York Times wrote that article.
Yeah. We've got a big one coming out soon.
Okay.
With the London Financial Times.
Oh,
Nice.
Yeah, it's the person's talking about how we navigated through COVID. Yeah, it's one of those situations where you had someone come in and the writer was just in Roanoke and liked what we're doing.
Really? When will that be out? We'd love, where can people find it?
JP's already done all the interviews for it.
Okay.
So I don't know exactly. I can ask him and get back from that.
Really impressive. And they were in your restaurant and then saw what you were doing and decided to, like you said, you never know who's walking through your doors.
Yeah. So the writer was this younger guy who lives in Washington D.C.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just like, I got to get out of Washington D.C.
Yeah.
Because he'd been stuck there because of COVID.
Yeah.
And he was like, just pick the place on the map and pick Roanoke because it was drivable,
Yeah.
Yeah. He came and ate dinner at like 8:30 at night, which is very metropolitan.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. I was like, this guy's fancy.
Yeah, he showed up at 8:30.
Eating dinner at 8:30. But yeah, no, it was great. He was so nice and he was talking to me a little bit, and then JP was here and he was talking to him, and then finally he was like, I'm a writer. I'm gonna do a story. I want to do a story on you guys, and he wasn't kidding. And then JP's done the interviews, and so
that's awesome.
Have you seen? There's been this great migration now in the country because of COVID. Hunter, I'm sure you're obviously aware, and you're talking about people wanting to get out of major cities.
yeah.
Have you seen and you talked about young people coming downtown. Have you seen a little bit more of an influx of people into the area? Maybe DCers who decide, no more DC. I'm gonna work remote now and live out here.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, of course there's a housing shortage now here.
Mm-hmm.
There's the boom. I think it's kind of happening everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
In my neighborhood, I live in the city. Like houses sell before they even go on the market now.
Yep.
I live in this little area called Grandin, which is part of the city, but it's not right downtown.
Mm-hmm.
But also what wasn't happening before were all the housing out in the counties. Same things happening there, which to me is just showing that people are wanting to move out, out into the country and out away from. And yeah, we definitely have a lot of people moving here from other places.
Wow. And then you as a restaurateur, I think you're offering these people a little slice of DC or Manhattan because you are using them as your comp set. So you said earlier, you don't really try to compete with the other area Roanoke restaurants. You put yourself in competition with these big city restaurants. So when these people come, they probably feel more comfortable being in your restaurant thinking, I could live here. There is two of these. There is a certain style of service and experience that I'm accustomed with. And, I don't have to go to the Get Her Done bar. I can just go to the, so.
We have the Virginia Tech Research Institute here now, where they're focusing on one little particular part of the brain that because of Alzheimer's, and they're bringing in teams of doctors to work at this research institute. So they'll bring in a whole team of like 15 people. So it'll be a doctor and all the people that work with this research doctor,
Wow.
And the man that's responsible for doing all the recruitment brings them to our restaurants, pretty much specifically just to our places.
Wow.
Yeah, because he wants to show them that, they're going to have some creature comforts that maybe they were used to, that it wasn't, So we have a lot of recruitment dinners at each place,
Very interesting. Yeah, your restaurants are real, and I think a lot of places, restaurants can be these spots where business is done. Where people use a restaurant as a representation of a city to show its high points, that this is we're on the map, or it's this. And it's interesting that sometimes I think people take restaurants a little bit for granted. And I think at the same time, they're a part of their daily lives, and they're a part of their ego a little bit sometimes.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, the city uses Roanoke City, we have it's called Downtown Roanoke Incorporated. They invite travel writers to come into town. We had a group here this past week. And, they'll be like, would you guys mind hosting these travel writers? We'll buy them, a drink and maybe something, and the city uses all the restaurants as a way to promote Roanoke,
Mm-hmm. So Hunter, I know Roanoke, there's a lot of stories behind it. I think John and I have talked a little bit, but do you want to talk about any of the history of Roanoke and kind of how the city came about?
Wow, you put me on the spot here, man.
Or just any fun facts you may know about the city, because I know.
How about something, Hunter, that a person that didn't know about Roanoke, what they would find interesting about it.
Well, first off, we're not the lost colony, Roanoke.
That's a distinction we need to make.
Yeah, that's kind of So Roanoke, at one time, the major industry here was the railroad. Norfolk Southern was here, and back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, down like Roanoke, the little city here was it was thriving. They had a trolley system, things like that. It's wild to see photos. People just everywhere out on the streets, like business after business after business after, and it was because we were a rail town, and then eventually, things changed and the industry changed, and we went through this period of where the city, like Roanoke, wasn't doing great. In the 80s, 90s, some of the people that were in charge of our like I guess in the 80s, mid 80s, there was a group of business people and political leaders that got together and put together a plan about how they were going to try to make the city more attractive to industry and for people to come here. And one of the things they did is first thing they did was build a greenway. So we have like a greenway that now connects from Roanoke all the way to Blacksburg, Virginia, which is 30 miles. You can ride a bike. You can ride a bike by a river pretty much.
Wow, for 30, that's amazing. For 30 miles.
Oh yeah. It's crazy. And so it's people use it for exercise, and then we also those people started, marketing the idea of this being a great place to go hiking and mountain biking. We carry a rating, we have a mountain bike rating that's the same as Denver, Colorado.
Wow.
I don't know the specifics, but it's we're considered one of the three that have this ranking. There are only 3 places in the country that have it, and Roanoke's one of those places. So the outdoor aspect was really promoted to grow the city, as a marketing tourism thing. And then the healthcare industry really took off. We talked about the research institute, but we have Carillion Healthcare here. We have a medical school here now, and that's been the driver recently, but that's pretty much all I know about the history of Roanoke. I'm sorry.
That's pretty great.
I should have gotten the Wikipedia out, and I could have just.
And Hunter, with Roanoke being a little older city, do you have any good ghost stories from your restaurant or any places you've been in the city?
Well, it's funny you should ask, because Lucky's haunted as shit, man.
Is it really?
No, it is. It's so it was built in 1901.
Okay.
And it's definitely I've had multiple experiences here. It's definitely a female ghost. And I've seen a couple things that I can't explain,
Wow.
I definitely this. Maybe we shouldn't say this because then people might be afraid to come here.
Yeah, we don't want to conjure her up.
But yeah, it's definitely one night I was closing up and I was here by myself, and I just didn't feel like I was by myself, And so I go over to lock the door, and I turn the lights out, and the computers have timed out. The point of sales have timed out, gone to black screen, And I just said something like, if somebody's here right now, go ahead and do something. You know what I mean? And I kid you not, both POS screens came on.
Really?
And the messed up part about all of it was, I realized I'd left my keys behind the bar. I had to walk back around where both point of sale systems were and get my keys, man.
Oh, I feel like you might have been running more than walking.
Yeah, I ran. Yeah. So, but I've had other things happen.
Now, why do you think you said it was you think it's female? Why do you think it's female?
One morning I was here like 10:30. I was in the kitchen doing prep, and I was pretty sure I'd locked all the doors when I came in, but I wasn't 100%. And I'm got my back to the restaurant. I'm in the kitchen cooking on the stove, and I heard a woman talking in the restaurant, and I was like, well, that's weird. I thought I locked the doors, and I walk out, and there's no one, but I go and the doors are locked, So I go back to, I was cooking there at the stove, and next to the stove to the right is a doorway down the hallway to the bathrooms. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw a 5-foot flash of light, tall flash of light go down the hallway, at a walking pace. Yeah. And so I was like, damn, I knew it was a woman haunting me. I knew it was going to be what haunts me forever.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was a female ghost, I think. I don't know.
This may be, Joe, you asked the question. This may be the best ghost stories I've heard.
Oh, yeah. We asked this question to a good percentage of our guests, and that's definitely top.
This has got to be
top 3.
Two stories one after another that were really, really, really. I got chills after the first.
And people that work here, that they've had similar experiences, because they all think I'm crazy.
Yeah.
I'm telling them stuff. They're like, Hunter, he's, Our old chef, so our old head chef is now the head. He started he's the head chef at Fortunato, And he would come in and he downloaded a ghost app on his phone to make fun of me. And he'd be like, oh, Hunter, there's one right over there.
Yeah, wait till it gets you. Just wait.
Oh, yeah. So...
Thanks for being here, Hunter. Appreciate it, man.
Well, I can't thank you enough for asking me to do this. I've enjoyed it. Really enjoyed this today.
All right, After Hours Nation, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to stay updated, you can check out our site at afterhourscast.com. Don't forget to tune in next Tuesday morning for our next episode. After Hours Nation, stay thirsty, my friends.